Hey folks, this is Lucid, and I'm here with Nuke, the author of MapNuke.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about changing the default textures and terrain kind of that is in MapNuke. It's a new feature that was added to one of the recent versions, and basically you can come in here and you can put whatever kind of art you want. And right now this is the default art for MapNuke. And I suppose some of you may not know, MapNuke is a tool. I use it in most of my games to generate pretty balanced, but yet random starting maps for kind of arbitrarily large or small number of players. So this is the default art. You can change it here. This is what was added. And right now there's only one other art style that's added in here. And so here you can see Pendleton. And this was done by, and I keep forgetting it, Nuke. Who is it?
Yankee Flatline.
Right. So he did this, and it's pretty cool looking. It's kind of psychedelic. And so anyway, when you have the tool, you can pick whichever kinds you want. You put your players, which nations, and you can just generate a new map. And this is, in my opinion, way better than the inbuilt Dominions map generator. So anyway, that's the tool. But what we're going to talk about today is how to basically do what happened with Pendleton, where we have basically new textures and sprites and stuff. So if there's any, if there's any people in the modding community or kind of artists that want to contribute to this, they can. So Nick, what tools are we going to need? I've got some of them pulled up here.
Yeah, so you need only 3 tools, and they're all free. Source tree or some other sort of source control tool, a Git account,
right?
Unity, and I guess some sort of graphical editor if you're doing art.
Right. Photoshop. Okay. Cool. And I have those already downloaded. Okay, and so once you have those, and basically just downloading Source Tree, downloading Unity Hub, and then making an account for MapNuke. Once you have those downloaded, where do we start?
First things first, you got to go on GitHub. So you've already done all this, but we'll re-go through the steps just to make it easy for people. So you go onto the main page, and you can get to this from the itch page for MapNuke. There's a link to the GitHub.
Right.
So it's nukehouse/MapNuke, and then you go to fork on the right-hand side, which you've done already, and that will bring you to your own fork, which is in your case, it's Lucid Tactics/MapNuke. And then from here, you'd hit the green button code, and it gives you the option to clone. So you can click that little clipboard and then go to your source control tool. So in this case, we have on your machine, you have source tree, and you clone that repository.
Right. Now, the reason we had to do a fork is so that we're not, any changes I make aren't going to be, they're going to be separate and tied under me. They're not going to have anything to do with the main branch. And
yeah, exactly. And also, like, it makes it, if you want to like propose changes to MapNuke, or like if you have a new art style that you want to have included, you can make a pull request using your fork.
Right.
So that just makes the whole process easier.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we go to source tree. We're going to clone it. And okay, all you have to do here is you just paste in this thing that we copied under code. And anyway, once that's pasted in, it kind of populates these other things. It gives you a default directory where it's going to store this. That's fine. And we click clone. And it's going to sit here and think. I think this part's reasonably quick. Okay. And that's done. And now we go to Unity, right?
Yeah, so you've got all the files that you need. Now you go to Unity Hub. Make sure you have Unity Hub installed first, and then once you've got this repository, you boot up Unity Hub, and it will hopefully I know it has some sort of auto detect feature, but if it doesn't detect your install for MapNuke, then you'll have to add a folder wherever you stuck that. So in your case, yeah, it's in the documents.
And we just select folder here and pull.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, and it should find the right Unity version. So right now, like the whole thing uses 2019.2.11 F1, but in the future that might change. But the idea is that Unity Hub detects what version of Unity you'll need, so it handles all the downloading of that for you. So it makes it a lot easier to get into it.
For me, it didn't. And if this doesn't pop up when you click on it, then you can go to Unity, and there's basically a web page where you can select old versions. You'll need to select like download this particular version, and then once you've downloaded it, then it should pop up in this list. So anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
We've already downloaded it, so we can now click on it, and that's going to start opening this file up in Unity. And I'm going to go ahead and pause it, because this is probably going to take about 3 minutes. Okay, and like magic for you, the Unity has loaded. So now that we're in Unity, we can't actually see any of the MapNuke stuff until we click the starting scene, which is, oh, I forget where is it? Where do we put it?
Scenes, the folder.
Scenes, that's right. So we double click this, and now you can see the main kind of layout for MapNuke. And if we click play here, this is a good way to test that you got it loaded correctly. You will actually be able to run MapNuke inside of the Unity hub, like so. And you click unplay, and you go back to the dev mode, basically. So, now what we're here to talk about is how to put new art assets into into MapNuke, and then to get them used by the program. So, first of all, where do we even put these things? Like, where are they stored?
Yeah, so GFX is like the catch-all folder for everything art-related, and then within that we have subfolders. The map art folder contains all the sprites. Materials is more like the stuff we use for the underlying meshes for the provinces.
Right. So in the case of these, we can see there's a folder for default, and we see there's a folder for Pendleton. And so if we're going to make one for ourselves, we'll have to make a new folder, right? So in this case, we'll call it Lucids folder, and we'll make one here. Okay. And now they pop up down here. Now there's nothing in my folder right now. If we wanted to, we could copy all the assets from inside default and put them in here, but you don't really need to. Because basically the things in the art manager will, if you want to use something from default, you can just reference it out of the default folder. But if you want to put it here and then maybe modify the assets inside of it, that's a thing you could do. Okay, so this is where they're stored. I've got a texture that I made that I'm going to go ahead and put in there. We'll see how it pops up. So I've got this texture, and we're going to export it as a PNG. And we're going to export it into MapNuke, into assets, graphics, and then this is a texture, so it goes in materials. If it was a sprite, like a mountain or a tree, we'd put it in map art. And then we'll put it in here. Oh, I've already got it here, actually. Okay. It's kind of weird. Okay. Okay, and we had saved it to the wrong folder, but anyway, I put it in the right one now. So we can see this planes texture, which I just had in Photoshop. It is now in the materials folder, in my folder. And actually, I need to come back. We're going to make a folder in here called textures. We're actually going to put this in the textures folder. Okay, and as it comes out, like if I just put a PNG file, like a sprite file in here, we need to change some of these settings for it to be used properly by the shader in Unity. So there's two settings we need to change, right? One is the texture type, and that goes to default. Is that correct, Newt?
Yep. So we just want to make sure it's used as a texture and not as a sprite.
Right. And the other thing we're going to need to change is the wrap mode. And that needs to be repeat, if I recall.
Yeah, so repeat is just a different way of saying that it's a tiling texture so that it smoothly tiles across the entire map.
Right. And everything else you can leave as default, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, and we click apply, and now this is a texture. So If we look in, I think one thing we'll do real quick. I don't know if I can copy these.
You can show an explorer and then do it through your.
Yeah, we'll do that. Documents and MapNuke and assets and graphics and materials and default. We'll just copy all of this stuff over here. And that will be that. And so now when I come back over here, we can see Unity's updating. It recognized there was a new folder. And now we have all the shaders that are involved in the underlying kind of coloring of the terrain. And we'll get this linked up into a texture. But first, let's talk about, because this is the plains texture we're going to update, but let's talk about what the default is. The default is it's a shader, but it's not actually pulling a texture file the same way this is a texture. It's actually randomly generating textures, right?
Yeah, so if you click that little circle next to the play button, right to the right a bit. Way down. Yeah.
I see.
There you go. So yeah, you can change it to like a plane or a cube, and you can see how it looks. But yeah, this is a procedural. It uses Perlin noise to create shapes like blobs, and I use that for my default stuff. It's kind of ugly and flat, but it gets the job done, especially if you're not an artist.
Yeah. So if you want to come in here, and like Pendleton still uses these same Perlin shaders, right? So he's just basically changed the color scheme to make it kind of psychedelic.
Right, yeah. And there's also other like thresholds you can change, and the scale and the
right
and so forth.
So, we could come in here and we could change this to be, red, and you can see, or pink, and you can see it's popping up pink down here. And we could change this one to be, some other color like blue. And you can make this texture or color kind of look however you want to. And then you can change the thresholds. I actually haven't played with these at all. But yeah, so that makes pink a lot bigger. So yeah, you can change these up a lot. Now, what we're going to do in this one is we're going to do a custom texture. So if you have textures that you've made in like Photoshop or something, you come in here and you do custom, and we select texture. And here we can select any texture that we have stored in Unity already. And I believe the one we have here is called plains. Let's scroll down to, and this is it. Okay, so we now have the plains texture being used by this shader. One thing I have noticed is that if you're going to use this, this scaling factor, you're actually going to have to change. And if this is a 500 by 500 pixel, or 512 by 512 pixel texture. And that's another important thing to recognize. And tell me if I'm right, Nuke, that the textures need to be basically a power of 2. So 256, 512, 1028.
Yeah, so like that's just, I think it's more of like a good practice to have, because it makes it a lot, there's a lot of like efficiency you get from having a power of 2 size to your textures.
Okay, so it's maybe not a hard rule, but for a 500 pixel one, what I found was 0.15 for the scaling value works, but you may have to tweak this to get it to work for you. But just doing this, we haven't actually, if we click play, there's a few things. We're not there yet because there's no map style to select except the defaults. And we haven't changed any of the defaults. So we've done a lot, but we're not there yet where this is actually going to make it into MapNuke. What are the other things we have to do now that we've updated this shader?
Okay, so we want to see this new planes. So first we need to go into Art Manager, Art Styles, and you can see there now there's default and Pendleton. So you'd want to make a duplicate of default.
Okay, so I've done that, and I can probably rename this here. I'll call this Lucids because I'm unoriginal. And we have to rename it over here too, and this will be what shows up in the dropdown if I recall.
Yeah, so this is just like a player or a user-facing name.
Right. Lucid's map art. And what are we looking at here? What are all these? We see sprite sets and we see material meshes.
Yeah, so
what are all these?
the art configuration, it tells MapNuke what kind of sprites to use, what kind of connection sprites to use, what kind of materials to use on all of the generated meshes, and all like the stuff to use for winter, summer, etc. So like this is the meat and potatoes of how your art will look when you generate a map.
Right. So like if we look within planes, these are the sprites. So the sprites are going to be all the little doodads that are sprinkled on top of the plane's texture. Within here are a bunch of, like there's a little shrub sprite. Down here there's going to be some, what's another grass sprite? There's going to be some house sprites too somewhere. Yeah, here's a little hut sprite. And so basically this is just a list of stuff with links or references to the art assets you want to use. So if we update these art assets, all we have to do is update the links. And because when we made Lucid's map art and it was a copy of default, we inherited all the other links. So all the links that are currently in here, they currently point to the textures in the default folder, or the sprites in the default folder. So anyway, anything we're going to update, we're going to have to come here and update these. And then if we also want to change like how much grass is in there, we can tweak the spawn chances. So this is kind of just it's kind of like a control panel to determine how much of everything gets sprinkled in, right?
Yeah, and it lets you specify colors for things. Like if you have a sprite that's purely white, you can choose valid colors for summer and winter that it gets used on it. So for most of them, there's going to be no colors because the sprite isn't meant to be tinted, but there are certain ones that maybe you want to have tintable.
Right.
And there's also stuff like, you can make it so they flip on the x-axis randomly, or you can make it so that they remove a bunch of sprites around them, so there's like a bit of empty space around them.
Right, that's the size variable, right?
Yeah, and then there's like spawn chance, so like how many of them do you want to see in general on top of the province? So there's a lot of stuff you can like tweak and fiddle with.
And it's pretty easy because if you change anything, you're not going to like break the program. So you can come in here and you can tweak stuff, and then you hit play and you make your map and you just see what happens. It's
very trial and error.
Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Now what we need to do is we made this new we made this new planes shader, and we need to link up the one we made into our art style. So we've got the right thing clicked. We've got my art style manager for Lucid's map art selected. I come down here to the summer planes, right? And I select
so
that.
Summer Province Mesh Materials, you go to Planes, and you change that to the brand new material that you've made.
Right. So I actually want to click this black circle over here, if I recall. And this looks like the shader we just made. So I click that. And that's it. Now it's going to be messed up in the winter because I don't have a corresponding winter one yet. So I'd have to come back and take this texture and make it look all snowy if we want this to work. One thing I kind of found that, I'll show you in a second, but we can try this out because we should have done enough now where it's basically working. Isn't that right? Oh, no. What did we not do?
Oh, yeah. So this, I actually have updated the tool recently so that you don't have to do this anymore. But for the sake of this video, you're going to have to go into Art Manager and make some adjustments up a level.
Oh, right. Right here. And art configurations. We have to go do 3 here. And this last element we just changed to be Lucid's. And so now it's added.
Yeah, so like in the future, this won't be a step that people have to do. It's a lot simpler now.
All right, awesome. So we click right here, Lucid's map art, and we click generate new map. And you can see some of these tiles are using the older, or not the older, but the default, whatchamacallit, the default.
Yeah, the materials from the default.
Yeah, I forgot what the shader type is called, the Perlin noise, but yeah. Anyway, it's using those, and then you can see the planes are all using basically this new shader, the new texture. And we may decide that based on the color that we have for the planes, we may want the grass a different color. So that's something we could go tweak, or maybe we don't want the grass at all on it. And so those are all things we could come and tweak. But anyway, that's basically how. And actually, let's go do that, because I'll just show you. It's kind of easy. We come in here to the art styles, and if we decided we want less grass on the planes in this new tile set, we basically come over here to the province sprites, and we're going to look for all the grass elements. So this is a shrub. That's basically a grass. We can actually completely get rid of them. We can set them to 0, and we uncheck place at least once. This is if you want to get rid of them. That's another shrub. That's another shrub. And then if you wanted to, you could set the frequency lower or higher. But this is just showing how to kind of basically remove these if that's something you want to do. And if you want to, you can also replace these assets with like a different colored asset. So like a different colored grass. And some of the grasses, I don't know if they're here. I know the farmland grasses have colors you can replace, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, so I think farmland and plains both have sprites that are pure white. So they use the tinting system. So if you look at anything that has grass in the name, that would be a good example.
Okay. Place at least one. Okay, anyway, I actually went too far and I started making the huts not appear. Okay, yeah, here's some grass, and these do have valid colors. So we could actually change these to be something more in line with the colors on our... So I'm clicking this eyedropper here, and I can select on my texture. And these could be things that are maybe more in line with the color of the actual texture that I put in. And I think, okay, we've got a couple more here. And actually, I'm just going to copy these here real quick. Okay,
you can also copy paste. I think, well, yeah, like I think Unity has a lot of simple features where I think you can copy paste colors really easily if you like right click on it or something. I forget how you do it, but yeah, like they've made things a lot easier recently.
Yeah, I'm a Unity noob, so I'm the wrong person to be showing anybody how to do anything. But anyway, did I get? Oh my gosh, there's so many different kind of. We'll just despawn these kinds of grass because I don't feel like clicking on them right now. And okay, that'll be good enough. And then if we click play now, we can select the map art, and you can see that now the colors are a little more closely aligned to the stuff that's actually in the texture that we put in. And it's a little less dense. I think it actually looks a little better with the grass kind of aligned to the colors and the texture. So anyway, that's basically how to add a texture. If we want to add the sprites which go on top, I think I have one on my desktop somewhere. Let me pause and pull it up. Okay, so I have gone and basically put a sprite that I made in my map art folder under, well, basically in Lucid's. And it's basically this. It's a mountain that I had pulled out of Lucid's Atlas, and then I basically feathered the edges down here at the bottom so it'll blend into the terrain. And I colored it. I basically changed the color scheme so that it would be similar to some other color pattern that I had. And some other textures I was working on. But anyway, if we want to add this in, I've called it Big Mound 1. And what we're basically going to do is we're going to replace it inside of... where are we? Inside of... Here we go. do I have it? Oh, plains. Okay, so I want to update the one that's in Highlands, and I think it's Big Mound. I forget what element it is. I want to say it's like 11. All right, I'm going to pause it real quick and we'll find it. Okay, so it turns out it was element 8. So what I'm going to do here is I'm basically going to come here and I'm going to update this. I've clicked on this little black circle, and I'm going to type in Big Mound, because that's the name of my sprite. And then we just scroll through this list until we find the sprite we added, which is this one right here. And I'm basically replacing, right now this is linked to the old Big Mound, which is, you know, this thing. And we've replaced it with this thing. Did I need to actually do anything here? I think it's okay to be a sprite and claim. I don't think I actually have to change much, do I?
Yeah, so like it depends on the art style you're going for. The filter mode is the most important. So bilinear gives it that kind of anti-aliasing, so
Right.
like it's a little more smooth. But like if you want like pixel perfect, sprites, then you'd have point filtering instead, which has like no blurriness, just crisp.
Okay, we'll try that for now. I don't know if it's going to work. So we've gone and we've basically updated the link, and that's all you really have to do is you put the thing in the folder and then you update the link to it, and you want to see how it looks. So we're going to load this up here, and I'm going to do a big map. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it'll give us a better shot of because this sprite basically has to randomly get assigned somewhere. And if I don't see it, I'm going to pause it and we'll reload it until we get it.
You can also just like spam the regen button on one of the highlands until it gets it.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Wait, is this a Highlands? Yeah.
Yeah, it might be too small. Like I think the one you added was for bigger. I forget.
All right, I'm going to pause. Okay, we actually ended up having to sit here and reload it a few times because apparently RNG is not with us. But anyway, here you can see the asset we made, and it's you can see it's blended into the terrain. I actually went and put it in. I put into also some different kind of underlying terrain for the mountain type province. But anyway, yeah, you can see. With reason, like not that many changes, we've pretty dramatically changed the way this looks. And I think I'm going to finish. I think I'm going to have like a map art pack that's going to be stuff that I mostly rip out of Lucid's Atlas. And I think I might also. I've been talking with Pymus, and he was okay with us pulling some of the art assets out of his. So I might do another one with just textures from Pymus maps and art assets from there. But yeah, that's how you get sprites in. And if you want to make a new style, you can use, like here I'm still using all of the existing like border mountains and the trees from Nuke, and we're using the houses from the original. So you can just change as much as or as little as you want. And we could even change these border mountains, right, Nuke?
Yeah, I've heard people say they're too small. So like there's always changes you can make that would drastically change what things look like.
Right. Okay, so we've talked now about how to do the basic textures that are in the background, whether they're random or something that you kind of pull out of Photoshop, and how to do the sprites and adjust the frequency and this, that, and the other of it. And those are, that's kind of the meat and potatoes of making changes. Now, once all that is done, and you have something that works, probably the best thing to do is socialize it with like Nuke or I've got a. If you come to my Discord channel, we've got a thread for MapNuke, so you can come in there and basically show some pictures and stuff of what you've done. And ultimately, if we want to get this if you have changes that you think you've made that are really good. and you think they would be good in the main version of the program, you can do basically a push request or a pull request. Pull request, right?
Yes, exactly.
And you want to walk me through how to do that, Nuke? I kind of forgot.
Yeah, so first you need to like commit your changes to your local repository.
Right. I do that in source tree, right?
Yeah, so file status on the left-hand side, and that will give you a list of the files that you've actually changed. Bottom.
Sorry,
Oh,
a little slow.
a little more up.
Oh,
in your
here it is.
workspace.
Yeah,
there
okay.
you go, yeah.
Okay, and these are all the changes that I've made. So I basically could sit here and I could click the plus, and that would add these things to the basically committed changes.
Yes. Yeah, so exactly. And like, you got to be careful too, because sometimes you might make local changes to stuff that doesn't actually pertain to your art style.
Right.
But I think like in your case, you have this purple asset/export. Like that wouldn't be something that you'd want to commit, because that's generated when you export a map, right? So this is all
Right.
like test stuff.
Right.
So you wouldn't commit those things, but you would anything that's like yellow usually that's or yellow or green, that means that it's something that you've added.
Right.
So you can add all those and then add some sort of description in the bottom and then hit that checkbox where it says push changes, and then you'd commit that.
All right.
And that would stick all your changes on your local fork. And from there, you can create a pull request on the main branch, which allows me to actually like submit your stuff into the main code.
Right. And I could commit here. I'd have to put in my GitHub login information, which I don't have, so we're not going to do. But I would do this, and then it would send a message to you, and you would look at it and decide if you wanted to pull it into the main branch of the program or not.
Yeah, so pull requests, they show up on the main thing, so I can actually see everyone's pull requests, and it doesn't have to be just art styles. It can be like code changes and stuff like that. But this is the way that you'd actually go about like getting your stuff added in.
Yeah. And for that sake, just because, if somebody else comes in here and they do some style and for whatever reason, you don't want to add it into the main branch, you can still share it with friends, because people can come over here and look at where it's been forked, people that have used it, and they can use that version if they want to, right?
Yeah. So as long as your fork is public, I think you're allowed to make it private if you really want to.
Right.
But if it's public, then other people can look at it and they can clone it locally and take a look at your changes and so forth.
Right. And run it and make MapNuke maps off of it if they want to.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Nuke, can you think of anything we missed?
Not especially. I think that's the general workflow. A lot of it's just trial and error. Like you're making changes to the density of the sprites and stuff like that, and colors and so forth. So it just takes a bit of work, but that's the general workflow of how you'd go about creating a new art style.
Yeah, and I'll just say I'm so stoked that you added these changes to MapNuke. I think there's some really good artists in the community. Like when you look at all the custom nations that have been made, and just having like 2 or 3 people that decide they want to get involved in this and they want to make some really cool textures. I think when I first started looking at it, because you've made this, when did you patch this? Like 3 or 4 months ago?
This particular edition, yeah, it's been within the last few few months rather.
Right. When I first started looking at it, I was like, oh man, I just wanted to put art assets in a folder and be done with it and not have to think about it. And it's a little bit more complicated than that. Like you have to come in here and you have to link things up, but it's way easier than I thought it would be. So I was like initially intimidated more than I should have been. All you really have to do, you basically put art assets in a folder. Some of these things, if they're a texture, you have to say what kind of texture it is. And then you have to come in here and you just have to put little pointers to everything. But that's not really hard. Like we're not talking about writing any code. It's, I think it's reasonably like pretty easy. And I think if we get 2 or 3 people in the community who are stoked to add some art assets, we can have some really cool different styles that go into this tool. So thank you, Nuke.
Yeah, so I think with this video, this kind of makes the whole process pretty transparent. Like if someone needs help, they can just watch this video and it will explain, I think, anything that's within doubt to see this video.
Yeah, and if you're in any of, I think I know Nuke's in my Discord channel. I assume you're in some of the other ones too for Dominions. So if you go into any of the modding sections, or if you go into my Discord channel, into the MapNuke section, feel free to ask questions, and I'll answer them if I can, or Nuke will answer them if he's around and he can. But also, as more people get more familiar with how to come in and do the editing, there'll be more people to answer questions. So, all right. You have anything final to add, Nuke?
No. That's about it, I think.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.